This is it, people. This is what you've been waiting for. This is Everyday Celebrity Podcast. The podcast for everyday people with everyday problems, trying to find everyday solutions to accomplish everyday goals. Let's start the show. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Celebrity Podcast, #1 podcast in Oakland, #1 podcast in the Bay Area. And today we are joined by a special guest. So he is a doctor who specializes in therapy, and there's a lot of things going on in the world today, and it seems like therapy is trending right now. So I just wanted to talk to someone who specializes in that. So welcome, Dr. Norman. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, good to see you, Joe.
How was your day today?
My day, well, it turned out to be a bit busy. I got, besides seeing clients, I have other work to do behind the scenes with organization I belong to. I'm on the board, a bunch of therapists. Just keeping up with paperwork. I don't take insurance, so I don't have that paperwork to deal with.
What organization is this?
It's called, well, there's a statewide organization called the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, or CAMFT. Not easy to say. But I live out in Marin County. I live in Novato, so I belong to the Marin chapter. When I lived in the city, I belonged to the San Francisco chapter some years back.
So is this like an organization that's, what's the purpose of it? I know it's for therapy, but why was it created?
Well, it's more of an advocacy group. It promotes us marriage and family therapists, which is my license to practice. It promotes us mostly through state legislature, federal legislature, trying to get us equal rights with psychologists and social workers. Okay. That's how it came about in the first place.
And how long have you been doing therapy?
I graduated with my master's in 1991. So I actually started doing it in school in 89. So long time.
What school did you go to?
San Francisco State.
Okay. So you're originally from the Bay Area?
No, I grew up in New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay. Where in New Jersey?
South Jersey, near Philadelphia.
Okay.
We were Eagles fans.
So what was your childhood like? I mean, are you what year were you born?
Was I what again?
What year were you born?
54.
54?
Yeah.
Okay.
Saw more Phillies games than Eagles games, really.
So you grew up during like you lived through the 70s and
60s,
like the whole disco era and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Were you in Jersey at the time?
No, we moved to Florida when I was in high school. My stepfather, my dad died when I was young, and my stepfather contracted emphysema because he smoked. So we had to go to a warmer climate. I don't know that he had to quit smoking, but we had to go to a warmer climate. So we went to Florida.
What part of Florida?
There's a little tiny town called Plant City that's close to Tampa. So Tampa, like the Tampa Bay area, but it's a little tiny redneck. It's pretty redneck.
Yeah. Well, I would assume Florida's all the crazy shit you hear in the news is always in Florida.
Yeah.
For some reason.
It is.
Did you like living there?
Did I like it? No.
No?
No, I think of it as going into exile. Leaving New Jersey and all my stuff behind.
So you left Florida and then went to San Francisco State?
Well, when I left Florida, it was 1981 is when I moved out here. And it was before I had quit school. I was going to the University of Florida in Gainesville, and I had lost interest in what I was studying. And
what were you studying?
Well, I was studying psychology, but back then they didn't have much in the way of humanistic psychology towards counseling. It was more about studying rats in a laboratory. That just didn't. I didn't have any interest in that. So I dropped out and did some other things for a number of years.
Some like illegal things? You said that like it was some illegal shit.
I've done some illegal shit. Yes.
I mean, everyone has.
Yeah. No, actually, I took up dancing.
Okay.
I got into dancing, and I danced for around 6 years.
And when you say dancing, we have to be specific on dancing.
Yeah, ballet and modern dance.
Like some people might think, oh, stripping?
No.
So ballet.
Yeah, I did ballet and modern dance.
Wow.
Yeah. And I worked in restaurants to support my habit.
Uh-huh. So were you considered like a professional dancer, or you were just doing it for fun?
Well, the most professional I ever got was I taught it for a while. So I was good enough to teach it, but I started when I was 22, which is late, even for a male dancer. So I didn't.
But you excelled in it, right? Because, I mean, obviously you started teaching it.
Well,
so you had to have been good.
I knew what to tell people what to do. I just couldn't do it and I didn't look good enough to really make it big. It was a small town, so I got to perform a lot. Yeah. There weren't that many guys dancing. It wasn't considered too macho to dance.
Okay. So what happened to you to make you feel like you needed to go back to school?
Well, that's a good question. I was, I said I worked in restaurants, and I kind of faded out of dancing because it just I knew I wasn't going to make it. So I was kind of pursuing a restaurant career. Like I was managing a place in Berkeley, and which was hard, like being a night manager. I got into bartending, which was probably the most fun job I ever had. But I was feeling kind of lost, and I met up with an old friend of mine. We were having lunch, and she was in graduate school to become a psychologist. And I was talking about how lost I felt. She said, you'd probably be really good with kids. I said, kids? I don't know anything about kids. I just trust me. So she sent me to Edgewood Children's Center. It's a big residential treatment center out in the Sunset in San Francisco. And she connected me. I started doing, they called it childcare worker. This was 1986. And I worked with a lot of kids who were taken out of their homes because their parents were either abusive or not there, or, that kind of thing.
So was this like volunteer work, or this was an actual job?
No, it was a job. Okay. Yeah, it was a job.
So by this time, did you already have a undergrad degree?
I hadn't finished it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because dancing, and then quit dancing, and then I took up with working with kids. But the kids actually inspired me to go back and to finish my bachelor's and get my graduate degree.
So, so when you were working with that, your undergrad, what was your undergrad in? I mean, it
was in psychology.
Psychology, but not anything specific? Like abnormal psychology, children's, like.
Well, that's the thing about a bachelor's degree. It's very general. It's everything. It's abnormal. It's personality. It's just a whole variety of psychology. So you can't do anything with a psychology degree. Yeah. Really. You have to get a graduate degree.
And then, so working with those kids, you knew the exact job that you wanted when you went back to school.
Yeah. Well, I loved the kids, despite how tough they were. They were tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Well, they had a lot of anger and trust issues, and they took them out on us because their parents weren't around to take it out on. So they took it out on us. And I knew that I wasn't going to spend my life getting spit on and beat on. So they helped me, go back. But I was there for about 4 or 5 years. And then even when I went to graduate school, my placement in like a practicum where I tried it out was with kids. And I kept working with kids for a number of years until I had one.
How many kids do you have?
I have one daughter.
One daughter?
My ex-wife had it. I was just there.
Okay.
I would say I had a kid. Yeah, I didn't have the kid.
So what year did you complete school?
91.
91.
June 1st, 1991.
Okay.
She was born June 29th of 1991.
No, I'm talking about that's when you had your child?
Both. They both happened in the same month.
At the same time.
I don't recommend that.
Okay. So when you finished school, what happened?
Well, in order to practice in the state of California as a psychotherapist, you have to get a license. And in order to get a license, you have to work under somebody's supervision. So I did some of that in graduate school, but then after I graduated, I got a job as we were called interns. And, you work for very little money if you get paid. Some places don't even pay you. And then you get supervision and somebody's basically watching to make sure you don't, do any real damage.
So were you like counseling people at that time?
Kids. I was still working with kids.
You were still working with kids.
Yeah, I ended up in a place with kids. Yeah.
Was there any time where you were like second guessing, like, why am I doing this? I'm not changing anyone's lives, or was it the complete opposite feeling? Because how teachers, when they're teaching, you got badass kids, and they're like, why am I even teaching these kids? They don't give a shit about math.
Yeah,
like they're cussing at me, they don't respect me, and then a lot of teachers want to give up, but that defeats the purpose of being a teacher. So, did you ever get that feeling?
Yeah, plenty of times. I mean, in the beginning, I was pretty excited, and I was excited to try out new stuff, because I was studying all these different theories, all these different masters from my field, and I wanted to go do what they did. So I would try them on. Today I'm going to be so-and-so, or today I'm going to be so-and-so. So I had a lot of fun with it. But then over time, especially when you've been working with somebody for a while and it's the same thing, and I ask myself, am I really helping him or her or them? And then every once in a great while, I'll run into somebody who I saw. In fact, I ran into one of those kids from Edgewood many, many years later. And he was a grown man, and he gave me a big hug, and he said, "You really made a difference." And that's all I needed.
Yeah.
That happens, but it doesn't happen often enough,
I mean, that must be a great feeling.
Yeah, especially from that kid, because I thought, I don't know if he's going to make it.
So how long did you have to work under someone before you became certified?
I got my license in 1994.
Okay.
So you have to accumulate 3,000 hours of practice, and then you got to take 2 tests. And once you do all that, you get a license, and you can hang out a shingle. Start your own business? So, yeah.
Okay. Did you immediately start your own business after you got certified?
Well, I was working under a guy in San Francisco. He had a practice, and I kind of worked under him. Mm-hmm. And so he would send me the people who couldn't afford his fee, who, needed to pay less.
Yeah.
And so I kept working with him. I mean, once I got my license, I could kind of work alongside him. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I started my own practice. I mean, it kind of grew out of his shop, so to speak.
Mm. So, so you specialize in, let's see, like relationship therapy, right?
Yeah.
Like marriage counseling.
I've done a lot of couples work. I did a lot of couples work under that supervisor.
Now, when I think of like therapists and stuff like that, right? Let me give an example. Like when you go to the gym, right? And then you want a trainer, you will want your trainer to look like they're in shape, right?
Yeah.
Like muscles, like someone who like looks like they work out. So, because you're taking advice from this person.
Right.
Like I can't have a trainer who has a big belly and they're telling me, oh, you need to do 10 sit-ups a day when it looks like he don't even do 10 sit-ups. Right. So you specialize in relationships and all that. And you said you were married, correct?
I'm married now.
You're married now?
I've been married before.
Okay. Now, do you think being married and getting divorced and then married again, do you think that's a negative when someone comes to you and asks for marriage advice because they're like, okay, you're giving me this advice. How come you didn't take that advice on? Yeah, take that advice on your first wife or blah blah blah. Do you get that a lot, or is that something that you feel is a correct thing for someone to question?
I don't see why I mean, there's no reason somebody couldn't question that at all if it came up. And I don't think it's a problem because I know what it's like to be in a relationship. I know what it's like to go through difficult times, and I know what it's like to not be able to stay together and to go through divorce. And it's hard. And if anything, I have a lot of empathy and understanding for people who go through it. So, and it's not exactly giving advice as much as it is, helping people figure out what they want. Because it doesn't matter what I tell them to do. They're not going to do it. People don't do what you ask them to do.
No. So, I mean, what's the point of them? What's the point of them going to seek help then?
Well, because they over time, they begin to hear their own self, their own voice, their heart. They can hear that. And that's what I want. That's what I want for them. Because I could tell people to do that. It's not the same as a medical doctor who says, stop. You got a problem with your rotator cuff. You should stop pitching.
Yeah.
When you play baseball, you should do something else. And you keep pitching. It's not the same. It doesn't work quite. It really doesn't work like that.
So basically it's like someone who's like addicted to like some type of drug, and the doctor says you need to stop doing this drug because you're going to end up dying. And then the psychologist, when they go to therapy, you're not telling them to stop doing the drug. You're basically trying to find out why they're doing the drug.
Yeah. What's it about?
Yeah.
And I mean, part of my specialty is alcohol and other substances.
Because when you figure out the why, because if they're doing drugs, if they're addicted, they don't even know why they're addicted. So they can't be like, oh, I'm going to stop.
They've lost, by the time they realize they're addicted, they've lost sight of why they started in the first place.
So that's basically the whole point of therapy to you?
That's a pretty good summary. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think nowadays, like therapy and mental, like getting mental help and all this other stuff I think it's becoming, people are starting to use it because it's just a cool thing to say, like, oh, I'm in therapy. I talk to a therapist. Do you like everyone's talking to a therapist? Oh, I'm sad today. Oh, you should go see a therapist. Do you think everyone needs therapy? Because I don't think everyone needs therapy.
No, I don't think everyone needs therapy. I think people need support. Mm-hmm. People can get support from their friends, from their community, from their church, from their whatever. It doesn't have to be us. I mean, and there are people I've worked with who I've said, I think you could get this from, another place and save yourself a lot of money. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be. It's more, I think, for people that have a more serious mental illness, a more serious concern. I mean, they're so depressed that they feel like killing themselves. Mm-hmm. That's pretty serious.
Yeah.
As an example.
Can someone be like, oh, I'm pissed off, I lost my job, like I'm late on the rent, blah blah blah, and I've had a thought of killing myself because I'm in these situations. But then let's say 2 weeks later they don't have those thoughts. Would you suggest therapy to a person like that? Or would you just be like, I mean, you were just in a bad state of mind that one time, but you don't need to go seek a therapist. You don't need to because I had a conversation with some of my friends and we were talking about the same thing. And I was like, yo, people don't, just because you're sad one day, that doesn't mean you're depressed. You're just fucking sad that, oh, I'm sad that the Cincinnati Bengals lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sad for a week. That doesn't mean I'm in depression mode.
Right.
So I don't need a therapist, but they were like, yeah, I think everyone should go talk to a therapist.
Well, there is, I think it has become popular.
Yeah.
Which is, maybe it's a good and a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, because there's a lot of people that have always poo-pooed it. Like, it's bullshit. Mm-hmm. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah. Not everybody can do that. Some people can and move on, but there's also, I mean, if somebody comes to me and they just want to be a better person, okay, I can work with that, but I'm going to remind them they're paying me and it's okay with me, but I'm always upfront that, you don't have to, like, I want you to make an informed choice.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to do this, it's okay. It's cool with me. You want to pay me for this. I love working with people and talking to people. I love it. And especially if it's not real hard, because there's some people that are harder to work with than others. Some people are really willing. Other people are like kicking and screaming because they don't want to change. Mm.
Have you ever told someone like, listen, you're basically wasting your time. You don't really need therapy. Have you ever told someone that? Like, you need to stop seeing me because I think you're perfectly fine.
Well, I've never been quite that blunt, but I have said, I've had people who, no matter what I say, they've always got a reason not to. Like, not you should do this, but every time you do this, every time you drink, as an example, every time you drink, you end up loaded and driving your car, and your wife is really worried about you hurting yourself. And yet, no matter what happens, you keep saying you're not ready to quit. When are you going to be ready? What is it going to take? And that's a challenge. to your point, that person may just not want to change. They may not want to stop drinking, and they may not care enough about their own life and others to go drunk driving.
So at that point, you're just when you come across someone like that, at that point, you just say what? You just say, oh, I can't do anything for you.
I would say something like that. So I've had those conversations with people, and when they hear that, it sometimes it rattles them a little bit, and it can sort of wake them up a little bit.
Do you think just the fact that they continue to go see you is telling you that they kind of want to change, but they just haven't gotten there yet? Yeah. I mean, listen, nobody comes to therapy skipping and whistling and singing a song because they're really happy to be there. It's usually because there's a crisis. One of my questions is always, why now? What happened? What did something just happen? And usually there was something that happened. My wife threatened to kick me out if I don't stop drinking. Oh, okay. Well, that's a motivator. Yeah. What are some of the reasons do you think marriage that people are not getting married as much anymore?
Well, I think my parents' generation, it was harder to get divorced. My generation, it became easier to get divorced. And I think the next generation, which would be my daughter and maybe you, I'm not sure, might be like, what's the point? If we can live together, we can do everything like a married couple. What's the point? Why get married?
Do you think feminism is one of the reasons people don't get married anymore? Because a lot of women just be like, oh, I don't need. Because when you think about marriage, I'm pretty sure when you look at your parents, are your parents still alive? Did they pass away when they were still married when they passed?
That's a complicated. My father died when I was a kid, and my stepfather remarried. My mother remarried to my stepfather, but they split up. So they were both. He was remarried again, and I think his wife was still there when he died. She was single. She was alone. My mom.
Oh, well, that was a bad analogy. But let me give you this example. So, feminism. Feminism jumps on the scene, gets bigger and bigger every decade. And then, but I think it's even more bigger now in these generation of women. Cause when you think of marriage, you think of, most people think of like old school times, like the man, head of a household, goes to work. The woman stays at home, raises the children, controls the house. So you think of those male female gender roles, and then the women today, the whole feminist movement, like they're like, okay, well, the woman shouldn't have to stay home, like, or I don't even need a man. I don't need to do this. They don't want to conform to those old school roles because they think it's bad. So do you think that's part of the reason a lot of people aren't getting married? Or do you agree with that?
Well, when you say old school, that's like my parents' generation.
Yeah.
Because from my generation, lots of people didn't marry, or if they did and split up, then they ended up living with somebody. So is feminism making a difference? I mean, I don't know how anybody, unless they live in Marin County, can afford to be a single family earner like the man. And we're also talking about straight relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, well, just any. I mean, yeah, we can use straight relation, but I'm just talking about marriage in general.
Yeah. Well, because you're saying men and women.
Yeah. We'll
but in those roles, those traditional gender roles, a man and woman. My mom, you know what she did? She was a housewife. That was her job. Mm-hmm. And dad and later stepdad, they worked outside the house, but she had to deal with 5 of us. Mm-hmm. I don't know which job was harder. I think hers was harder. Yeah.
But a lot of women in modern times they don't even want to do that. So, I mean, I just think there's a lot of reasons why the marriage rate is down. And I just think that's one of the many reasons. Why do you think people get divorced? What's one of the reasons you think, the biggest reason?
I think the hardest thing about being married is, well, how do I put this? The primary reason, the primary principle to keep people together is their commitment to each other. Because no matter how amazing each of them are, shit's going to happen. It's inevitable. You can't not have shit happen in a relationship. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. So when shit happens, do you have the commitment to work through it and get to the other side of it, no matter what it takes, and then stay together? Mm-hmm. But somebody might argue, yeah, but okay, we did that for 20 years, but I felt like our relationship was just done. We'd grown in different directions. And I mean, that happens too. But I do see people run into barriers, which is their spouse, but it's really themselves, because she's just mirroring me and I'm mirroring her. And the stuff I see in her that pisses me off are the things in me that piss me off. If I have enough awareness to remember that, I might be able to calm down and get through that thing. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, but I mean, I'm pretty sure, you're a white man.
I am.
For those of you listening, not on YouTube, but why do you think black men specifically don't seek therapy? I mean, obviously some black men do, but in the black culture, a lot of black men, they're like, oh, therapy. I don't need therapy. I just got pulled over and beat up by the cops. My fucking brother got shot, murdered. And all those things that are going on, those are like trauma things. So any normal person would be like, oh yeah, you need to, don't hold it inside. Speak to someone. But a lot of black men will refuse to go see a psychologist.
Why do you think that is?
Why do you think that is?
Well, you could probably answer that better than I could. I've never been a black man. I mean, I don't know what the messages are within a black man's world about, because therapy can be seen in any community, any white communities as well, is my point, can be seen as you're weak. I've heard men say that. And I get men calling me for therapy and I'm like, wow, they're white men. Well, not all white men, but more than not, that they're actually seeking therapy, which that is a newer trend to me. Younger white men are seeking therapy. But my point, back to what you're asking about, I think it's seen as a sign of weakness by some people. And I don't know if that's were you told that? I know you don't want to be interviewed, but
I mean, yeah. I think that's what it is. A sign of weakness. And I mean, the black man specifically, we're looked at as, big. You have to be strong, deal with all the shit that's going on in the world. So I think that's a very, very valid point, and I think it's true.
Yeah,
it is seen as weakness in the black community.
Do you know?
Like a lot of people said I should talk to a therapist, but I don't think I should. I mean, I don't think I need to.
Well, you're going to know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you know that better than anybody does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But finding a black male therapist, I know one. I can think of one.
Yeah.
An old colleague of mine who's here in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
Or even a woman of color as a therapist. There's more of them than men of color therapists.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's more women in my field than men in general.
So you say you work and live in Marin? Yeah. What's the client? Are most of your clients living in Marin?
It's a mixture. I've got some in the city, and some in Marin. I see some on Zoom, especially if they're at a distance, because the pandemic kind of made that a thing. And some people come to see me in person.
Do you get a different type of client? Like your Marin clients, do they come to you with like certain problems, and then the San Francisco clients come with a whole different type of problems? Like is one more drastic than the other?
No, not really.
No.
No. But I've worked in worlds where the people that I see in private practice compared to some of the people I've worked with in nonprofit agencies where I've done a lot of work also, those people have no problems compared to being homeless, living on the street, being addicted to drugs and alcohol, and having a mental illness.
Were you ever like in a session and then like some rich white person is like talking to you and they're like, "Oh, I'm just having a worse day. My Range Rover, I couldn't park in my normal spot. Some lady took my spot, so I had to drive 5 more minutes out of my normal drive to get to this other spot." And then you're thinking in the back of your mind, I just got off a Zoom with my other client before you walked in here, and her daughter just like committed suicide, and now she's like homeless or whatever she's at. Now she's on drugs. Do you ever think like your fucking problems are not really problems and you're sitting here complaining about it? Do you ever think that? And then when you think it, do you ever voice it to your clients?
Well, you'd be surprised at what goes on in our heads. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you wouldn't. I mean, I think stuff like that, it's not uncommon for somebody to be saying something like that and for me to be internally rolling my eyes that this isn't really a problem. But I got to remind myself that this Range Rover driving rich white guy, that's his problem.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to help him with his problem. And my hope is to kind of bring his awareness a little bit higher to recognize that it's a fairly minor inconvenience compared to the people I've worked with. And because I have worked with people from all walks of life in other settings.
What, the relief work that you were doing that you mentioned earlier,
Oh, in Greece.
Greece, yeah. Tell me about that.
Oh boy. Well, 2015, I left a job. It was kind of abrupt, but it was necessary. And
like left or got fired?
I got fired.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it was pretty. It shook me up. Seriously shook me up. And I'd had this.
Was it what I mean? Did you get fired unexpectedly, or was it something that you did?
No, I didn't. It's nothing that I did.
Okay.
I was fired. They claimed I was harassing somebody.
Was there any truth to that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, there were some. Well, the whole thing evolved into a lawsuit from the person who her lawyer pushed against the company to get rid of me. And ultimately she sued the company and me. I mean, the company covered the whole, but it was a lawsuit for harassment.
So it was like some sexual harassment shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Was this a coworker?
No, I was a supervisor. Yeah.
Did she win?
He settled out of court. The guy who owned the company settled out of court.
I'm sure you don't want to go into that.
Well, I don't. I think it would.
Why did she say you were sexually harassing?
Well, sexually harassing, I don't understand at all. I was the director of this particular program, and I would meet with the different people, I was overseeing their work, helping to manage things. And we would meet, and I'm a very touchy person.
Yeah.
It's a habit. It doesn't mean anything other than if you were sitting closer, when we were talking, I might pat you on the arm or I might pat you on the shoulder. And I do that with everybody. And it's been it's a problem because, as I've been reminded, when you're a supervisor, you shouldn't do that. Not in this litigious world we live in.
Yeah.
So I did. And she didn't say anything, but I'm a therapist, so I picked up on something, and I'm like, "Oh, am I making you uncomfortable?" There was just this feeling. She said, "You are." I said, "Oh, sorry, that wasn't my intention. I was just being friendly."
So after she said "you are," you stopped?
I did, and then
So how the fuck can she sue you for that?
And then I forgot.
Oh, you forgot and did it again?
I did it again. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like in passing. She was walking by, and I patted her arm to get her attention. Again, just patted her arm to get attention, and then things went downhill. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you left that job.
Left that job. Got booted out of that job. And I had this decades-long desire to move to Europe, Netherlands. I knew some Dutch guys when I was in school back in the 70s.
Nice.
And I wanted to go
like
there.
Amsterdam area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a college town not too far from Amsterdam. I wanted to go to. So I thought, I think this is it. I don't know. It just popped up. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. I had decided I was going to take that opportunity. I owned my own condo, so I sold it. I got rid of or sold everything I owned, except for 2 suitcases, which I took with me. I got rid of everything. So I had enough money to live on for a few years. So I went to the Netherlands because I thought I was in a doctoral program after my master's. I decided I wanted to be called doctor. I thought that was cool.
That is cool.
So I thought I would finish my dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in the Netherlands for about 6 months. I didn't have a whole lot going on. I was just, like making my way around.
Was it all cracked up that you thought it was going to be? Or did you get there and like, it's not?
The Dutch are great people. They're really lovely people. Mm. But the weather, it's like living on a boat in a storm, except the boat doesn't move. It's constantly raining and the wind is always blowing. Yeah. It's just shitty weather all the time.
I can imagine going from sunny California to that.
Yeah. They get a little dry weather in the summer, a little bit.
So how long were you there for?
About 6 months.
6 months?
I got involved in a Dutch charity that was sending humanitarian aid down to Greece for the refugees coming out of Syria and Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So a couple Dutch people I met through that, a woman and her daughter, a teenage daughter, they said, hey, we're going down to Athens. Why don't you come? Because, go to Athens is like going to Southern California from here. Mm. So I went with them and I just totally fell in love. I fell in love with Greece. I fell in love with the work. It was supposed to be a week. I stayed there for a month. Mm. I went back to Holland to meet my daughter and have a vacation we had planned, and then moved back to Greece and stayed there for close to a year. Mm.
Was it why did you leave, come back to the States?
I got real tired and really burnt out. Humanitarian work is just, it's hard. Mm. The trauma, I'm sensitive to that stuff. I should be because it's my work. Mm-hmm. But being around refugees, I worked in a refugee camp outside of Athens for about 6 months. And you could feel the trauma. You could feel it coming off these folks. And they were so sweet and so kind. I couldn't understand. I couldn't make sense of how could they be so sweet and kind and have been through what they've been through in Syria or Afghanistan for that matter.
What, so psychologists, right? People say in order to study psychologists in order to study psychology, you have to be like a little bit like crazy. Have you heard that before? Because you're basically getting into people's minds and heads and shit.
Yeah.
And a lot of, if you look at history, a lot of like crazy people were psychologists, like the person who Adolf Hitler's right-hand man, the person who started the whole Holocaust, let's like get rid of the Jews, was a psychologist.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I forgot his name, but he came with the whole. He told Hitler about the whole. We're the master race, and we need to get rid of the Jews. That guy, he was the architect of the Holocaust. He was a psychologist. Who else was a psychologist?
You're telling the world this.
Yeah. So there was other people, but I just can't. But that's one person that I can think of off the bat. But there's been a lot of like crazy people who were big in history.
Yeah,
they were psychologists. So, do you agree when people say, "Oh, you have to be a little bit crazy to study the human mind"?
Well, yeah. I think to some degree, because like I find the human mind fascinating, and I know my own fairly well. I've been a practicing meditator for decades, mm-hmm. and meditation has taught me a lot about myself, as much, if not more than therapy ever has. So by knowing my mind, I can know other people's minds.
Mm.
Not very much bothers me or scares me. I mean, it's always, sometimes I step back from myself and say, I mean, because some of the people I've dealt with who are floridly psychotic, like seriously, they really are out of their minds. I mean, this doesn't sound very professional, but somebody with a psychosis, who doesn't know where they are, or thinks that, you know, you're reading my mind, or, you know, that kind of paranoia, and they're using drugs at the same time, which just makes the whole thing worse. And I've dealt with people like that, and I feel at ease. It doesn't bother me. But I also had a couple brothers who were schizophrenic. I grew up with them. They were from a different dad. My mother was married a few times.
Oh, these are your,
yeah, my own brothers.
Okay, I thought you just like brothers, like black brothers, like my brothers.
Yeah, no, these were my biological brothers. I have those brothers too.
Does like knowing so, I mean, obviously you're a doctor, so does knowing so much about the human mind, do you think that sometimes hurts the relationships you have when you like meet people or like with friends because you're always analyzing them?
Well, I'm not always analyzing them.
No?
Not well.
Like if you're a dentist, like I'm pretty sure when you get off work and you're just in a bar meeting a girl, you're looking at her teeth. Like that never leaves your mind. Like if you notice someone with a cavity form and you're a dentist and you're just in a bar talking to a girl, you're gonna look at her teeth like, oh shit, you got a cavity. So in the back of your mind, you're fucking thinking about teeth, no matter what. So you're a therapist, you're a psychologist. So when you meet people just off the street and you're talking like, oh, damn, I see that you have a little bit of trauma. Like in the back of just on regular conversations.
Yeah. Okay. I get what you mean. Yeah. When you said analyze, it kind of threw me, but I do think, I mean, as I kind of get people fairly easily and quickly because I'm trained. I mean, I'm trained, you know, I'm a trained observer, you know, just, it's one of it gets me in trouble with my wife, for example, or even my daughter. They'll be like, why are you staring at those people? I said, oh, I'm just fascinated. But Dad, this is my daughter, Dad, it's really kind of gross. You know, she's 30. She's kind of gross. You're staring at people. And I'm like, I just find people so interesting. And you're right. Maybe, you know, I shouldn't stare at them. I really am fascinated. And when I'm looking at people, I'm trying to understand what's going on. Like there's a family over there at a table in a restaurant, and I'm going to figure out the family dynamics. This is what I sort of play around with. It's hard for me to resist.
Why do you think you're so interested in people?
Well, I think because of the crazy family I grew up in. There was a lot of mental illness in my family, a lot of addiction, a lot of craziness. And I survived it. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people from my family and about myself and what I can handle and not handle.
What childhood trauma did you go through?
Well, my father, my biological father, was bipolar.
And you said your brothers were too, right?
Well, so my mother's first husband, before she married my dad, she was schizophrenic. She had 3 sons, my 3 older brothers, half brothers. I mean, we all grew up together, so we were brothers. 2 of them were schizophrenic. Then she split up with him and married my father, who was bipolar. My younger brother is bipolar. I'm a little moody. I'm not bipolar.
Okay.
But I definitely have some mood issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've learned over the years how to manage myself pretty well.
So basically the childhood trauma that you've been through is just like growing up with these people with these illnesses?
Yeah. Yeah, the yelling and the chaos. And, you know, I mean, my mother had 5 boys too. I mean, that if we were all, you know, normal, that would be crazy. Anyway.
Is schizophrenia, is that something that's passed down in like DNA? Because you said she married someone who was bipolar, and then the kids that she had ended up getting it.
Yeah. Well, there's some genetic connection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much. I don't know what percentage, because she had 3 sons with that man. 2 of them were schizophrenic and 1 of them wasn't. And then she had 2 more with her next husband.
Mm-hmm.
My younger brother turns out bipolar, but I'm not. I'm not completely normal.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? There is no such thing.
Mm. What's the difference between someone being schizophrenic and someone being bipolar? Because I was under the impression, and a lot of people are under the impression, that those are basically the same things.
No. Well, no. So schizophrenia is what's called a thought disorder. It's somebody whose thoughts don't make a lot of sense. You might have heard about this, like hearing voices or having hallucinations. I've worked with people, or I've worked in programs with people who are hearing voices. And even as a kid, 'cause my brothers were quite a bit older than me, and they were like late teenagers, and one of them in particular would sit there and he would be like arguing with somebody, but nobody was there. Mm-hmm. He was having this like thing going on, like a dialogue in his head, because he was hearing voices. So people with schizophrenia, when I said psychosis earlier, that it's a kind of psychosis. There's different, this is hard to, I mean, I'm trying to make sense of it for your listeners.
Yeah.
To not
explain it in the dumbest way that you can explain.
Just to make it not too clinical, psychosis means you're out of your mind. Mm-hmm. People get psychotic from using too much methamphetamine. A normal, regular person can use too much meth and become psychotic. Chances are that when the meth goes away, they'll go back to their normal mind again. But if they use it too much and for too long, it can become a permanent state. Meth-induced psychosis. Mm. Schizophrenia is something that doesn't come from a drug. It comes from, I don't know exactly what the mechanism is, but there's something happening in the brain. Mm. There's different kinds of schizophrenia. There's paranoid. Maybe you've heard of that, or your listeners have heard of, he's really paranoid, and it's somebody who's like, the voices they hear are giving him shit constantly. If you could imagine like somebody just yelling at you, that's what they're hearing. And they get so bad that they're telling them to kill themselves, because people will attempt suicide because the voices, they're called command hallucinations. You got to kill yourself. You need to go to the Golden Gate Bridge and get your sorry ass out of here. That kind of thing. So there's schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. Bipolar is called a mood disorder, and it's depression down, mania is up. Somebody who's manic can seem like they're having a really good time because they don't sleep for days. Meth can do that too, by the way. In case any of y'all know.
Yeah, just stay away from meth.
Yeah. So the mania is like they're up for days. They do pretty reckless things. Like if they have money, they're spending all their money. They're buying things. They think they're like real grandiose, that they are maybe the incarnation of Jesus Christ. I mean, I've met people who believe that they're the new savior, or they are a savior, and that they're here to save the world. And they're talking really fast, and sometimes they're like hypersexual, just fucking everybody left and right. That's the mania. The depression is so depressed. This is what my mom used to say about my dad. He would get so depressed he couldn't get out of bed. Didn't get up to bathe, didn't get up to eat, didn't get up to do anything. Just go to the bathroom, back to bed. And he'd be like that for weeks.
That's kind of how like my dad was. He used to sit in his room and just drink. So he might have been, he might have been bipolar, but I just thought he was an alcoholic.
He might have just been an alcoholic. See, if somebody is...
Because the motherfucker used to yell all the time, but that he only did it when he was drunk. So maybe...
See, you got to remove the substance to find out if there's a mental illness there.
Yeah.
Because I've worked in rehabs, and people come in loaded. You don't know what's what. You don't know if they got anything besides the substance. And when the substance comes out for a while, then you can get a clearer picture of what else is, if there's something else there.
So like you said, schizophrenia is like something that's going on in the brain. So first of all, how does one prove that one is schizophrenic? Like, how can you prove that? And then how can you prove that this person, like a person, is faking to be schizophrenic? Because it's in the brain, right?
Yeah, but why would somebody fake something like that?
Well, just because, like, let's say someone, like a crazy person kills his wife and children, and then he stands trial, and he wants to get off. He doesn't want the death penalty, so he wants to get off. Say, "Oh, I'm schizophrenic. I was hearing voices to kill my family."
Oh.
How do you prove that? Oh, this person was just lying. He just wanted to kill his wife and kid.
Well, that would require a really skilled psychologist or psychiatrist to do a thorough assessment. I mean, it's a lot of questions.
So yeah, basically what I'm asking is, there's nothing that you can do like scientifically. Like, you can't look at the brain. Like, has there been any studies to where like they looked at people who say they were schizophrenic, their brains, and then there's something similar in each brain of these people that we know?
I've heard of some of those studies, but I don't think they've been proven out well enough to say, this guy's standing trial, so let's do a brain scan and we'll know. There's nothing that I know of that could do that.
Okay. Is being bipolar, is that easier to tell than someone being schizophrenic? Like, if you have two people, one says he's bipolar, one says he's schizophrenic. By just looking at them and studying them for like a few hours, is it easier to come up with a diagnosis like, oh yeah, this guy's bipolar because what he's doing, and this guy's schizophrenic because what he's doing? Is there like certain things that you would look for personally?
Well, here's another complication. Somebody can be bipolar, and remember when I was describing the mania, like they're really high. That high can when they're like that, it's likely that they're psychotic at the same time. And psychotic is, like I was saying earlier, where you don't know, like he has no grasp of reality. He thinks he's Jesus Christ. He believes he's Jesus Christ. He believes he can fly, and he's going to jump off a building, because he thinks he can fly. So in that state, next to a person who's schizophrenic, they can look fairly similar. You have to kind of go more by history. It's difficult in your scenario with a few hours.
Yeah.
Might be hard to tell. I mean, if I was hanging out with a group of people and they had different diagnoses and I didn't know, I might pick up on, based on some of the behaviors or the way they interact with other people.
I have a good friend named Ron, and he believes deep in his head that like Steph Curry is like the greatest basketball player he's ever seen.
Who?
Steph Curry.
Basketball or baseball?
Basketball.
Yeah.
His name is Ron, and he believes that Steph Curry is the greatest player ever to play basketball, which is wrong, obviously.
Well, he's a damn good player.
So do you think Ron is kind of...
Based on that, I wouldn't think anything. Just that alone. No. Ron, if you're listening, don't listen to him.
All right, so who do therapists? What does a therapist do when they need therapy?
They go to therapists.
So therapists go to therapists.
Sure. I've been to plenty of therapists.
So, I mean, how does that work? Because you're a therapist, going to a therapist, do you think like, oh, I don't like your methods? Or do you compare to your methods? Because you already know what this person is thinking, because you're a therapist too, right? So can that be weird?
I think it would depend on the skill of the therapist. Mm-hmm. I saw a therapist, I think, while I was still in graduate school and then afterwards for a while. And he was really a great therapist. And I learned a lot about how to do therapy by watching what he did with me, because my experience with him taught me about like just his technique and his style were really good.
So it helped you.
Huh?
It helped you.
It helped me. It helped me a lot. I mean, I was younger, newer, so I was really open. I'd like to think I'm still open to learning.
What were you in therapy for?
Oh, God. What was I in therapy for that time? Well, everything always seems to go back to my family. Yeah. Yeah. It was just a lot of chaos. And I ended up with a drinking and drug problem myself personally. I've been clean and sober now for a little over 13 years. So I know what it's like to struggle with addiction. And there was a lot of addiction in my family. I don't know about my father because he died when I was young, but my oldest brother was a gambler. I have two brothers who died. One of them died from alcoholism. It killed him. And the other one smoked himself to death. My younger brother, well, I don't know. I'm not in touch with him, but he was sober for a long time. And then he decided he didn't need medication anymore because he found Jesus. And Jesus was going to, take care of him. Unfortunately, Jesus wasn't home. So
Do you think if you didn't grow up in that household or in a household that chaotic, you would never have gotten addicted to drugs?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, my mother's father, my grandfather, he was definitely an alcoholic. He was a real nasty, abusive alcoholic. My uncles, my mom's brothers, they were all alcoholics. So, and we do know in my field and in my life that there's a genetic predisposition to addiction. When it's in the family, it doesn't mean you're doomed and you're going to become one. It just means the chances are higher.
Yeah, because my father was an alcoholic, and like literally hardly none of my siblings drinks.
Yeah. Is that on purpose?
I mean, it's to me. I'll just speak for myself, but to me, it was on purpose because I resented him, and I was like, okay, well, the reason for me not drinking is because if I drank, I would feel like I'm doing something. I'm more like you. So me not drinking proves that, because I don't like you, so I'm not even going to do the shit like him. He was smoked too. So I never even smoked before in my life because he smoked. Cigarettes, anything. Yeah. So yeah, I do think it's, I mean, some people, it goes like that. And then some people do it because.
I've known people like yourself who said, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Norman, thank you for coming on Everyday Celebrity Podcast. It was a good, informative conversation. If you would like, if you want to tell the people where they can find you, if you have any social media you want to give out to the world.
I do. Yeah.
Your website or whatever. If a lot of people hearing this who are depressed or want someone to talk to, if you want to give whatever contact information you want.
Yeah, probably the simplest thing to do is just my website, which is www. Do we still say that? It's really just normanherring.com.
Okay.
NORMANHERING.com. That has about me and what I do and stuff like that.
Okay.
Best way to get in touch. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. This is any last words?
No, but I want to thank you. It was good. I'm really glad I did this.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, you're welcome. I think, a lot of people need to, especially in these times.
Yeah.
A lot of people need someone to talk to.
Yeah, the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's wreaked havoc on my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like this podcast, a lot of people come on this podcast. I mean, they tell me shit about their lives that they don't tell no one.
That's right. Yeah.
And they feel comfortable telling me that because it's a relaxing setting and you forget that you're like having a recorded conversation. So I kind of feel like I'm a goddamn therapist myself.
I was going to say, you got good skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ask good questions and you listen well. Yeah. That's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe in another life.
Yeah.
But this is Everyday Celebrity Podcast and we are out. You.